Picture a cold, muddy European battlefield in the 18th century. You stand in a disciplined line, musket in hand, facing the enemy just yards away. The air is thick with gunpowder and fear. After the opening musket volleys, chaos erupts. Gaps appear where men once stood. Drums beat faster. Officers shout, "Fix bayonets!" With a click, your musket becomes a spear. The sun flashes on 1,000 blades. Two walls of steel face off, tension mounting. The final command, "Charge!" Your line surges forward, a wave of humanity driven by fear and discipline. The ground shakes as you close the distance, bayonet aimed at the enemy. Faces come into focus, terror is everywhere. Often battles ended before blades met, one side broke and ran at the sight of the charge. The bayonet's true power was psychological, shattering enemy resolve. Victory came not from the blade's thrust, but from the fear it inspired. The bayonet was more than a weapon, it was a force that shaped empires. On the battlefield, courage and discipline were tested in the shadow of cold steel. The bayonet story begins in the forests of southern France. 17th century hunters in Bayonne, facing wild boar, jammed knives into their gun barrels for defense. This simple trick caught the attention of military leaders. Armies then relied on musketeers for firepower and pikemen for protection, a clumsy system. The plug bayonet, a dagger fitted into the musket's barrel, promised to combine both roles. French King Louis XIV's army adopted it, hoping to create a new kind of soldier. Now, one man could shoot and then fight hand to hand. But the plug bayonet had a fatal flaw. Once fixed, the musket couldn't fire. Soldiers had to choose between shooting or stabbing, and a stuck bayonet could ruin the weapon. The need for a better solution was clear. The next innovation would change warfare forever. The bayonet was about to become the infantryman's defining tool. The answer was the socket bayonet, credited to French engineer Vauban. Instead of plugging the barrel, a metal socket slipped over the muzzle, with the blade offset to the side. Soldiers could now fire and reload with the bayonet attached. No more choosing between musket and pike, one man could do both. The French led the way, and soon every European army followed. A simple locking mechanism kept the bayonet secure in battle. This innovation created the modern infantryman, flexible, aggressive, and deadly. Armies could now march with bayonets fixed, ready for anything. Tactics became more dynamic, fire a volley, then charge without pause. The socket bayonet was a catalyst, transforming battlefields and military strategy. It set the stage for the great conflicts of the 18th century. The geometry of war had changed forever. The bayonet was now the symbol of the new age of infantry. The socket bayonet ended the reign of the pike. For centuries, pikemen formed the backbone of armies, defending against cavalry with long spears. But pikes were defensive and required specialized training. With socket bayonets, every musketeer became his own pikeman. A line of bayonets was just as daunting to cavalry as a wall of pikes. Armies quickly phased out pike regiments. One weapon now did it all. Infantry units became simpler, more versatile, and deadlier. Officers no longer juggled separate formations. They commanded unified, adaptable forces. Battles were decided faster, often by a single decisive bayonet charge. The pike vanished in a generation, replaced by shot and steel. The modern infantryman, musket and bayonet in hand, became the empire builder. The age of the pike was over. The era of the bayonet had begun. The bayonet's greatest weapon was fear. The charge was a test of nerves, two lines exhausted and terrified facing the ultimate crisis. Fixing bayonets signaled the moment of truth. Soldiers saw a wall of steel rushing toward them, driven by a unified scream. Discipline drilled through endless training was the only defense against panic. The charge aimed to break enemy cohesion before blades even met. Often one side fled before contact, defeated by terror alone. Generals like Frederick the Great obsessed over drill, forging soldiers who stood firm under pressure. The bayonet became a symbol of discipline and willpower. Victories were won by breaking the enemy's spirit, not by body count. The bayonet charge was the ultimate test of courage. On the battlefield, fear was as deadly as steel. Napoleon Bonaparte understood the bayonet's psychological power better than anyone. For him, it embodied the French army's spirit, aggression, and audacity. Napoleon's tactics favored massive columns and decisive bayonet charges to shatter enemy lines. At Austerlitz, French columns surged forward, breaking the enemy with cold steel. The bayonet was the tool that turned morale into victory. This doctrine spread beyond Europe. In the American Revolution, Baron von Steuben drilled Washington's troops in bayonet tactics. At Yorktown, American and French soldiers stormed British defenses with bayonets, sealing victory. The bayonet became the universal badge of the infantryman, British, French, or American. Armies stood or fell on their ability to face the bayonet's threat. For nearly 2 centuries, the fate of nations was decided by the will to withstand or deliver a bayonet charge. The bayonet was the ultimate test of resolve. The bayonet's dominance faded in the mid-19th century. The reason firearms evolved. Muskets were inaccurate and short-ranged, making bayonet charges necessary. Rifled muskets and breech loaders changed everything. Accurate fire at long range made open charges suicidal. The American Civil War proved this, as rifle fire decimated attacking lines. Machine guns and artillery in the 20th century ended the era of massed bayonet charges. Trench warfare replaced open field assaults. The bayonet still saw use in close-quarters trench raids, but its battlefield supremacy was over. Yet, it endured as a symbol. Bayonet drill remains part of military training, instilling aggression and discipline. The blade that once forged empires now reminds soldiers of the spirit required to close with the enemy. The bayonet's legacy is one of courage, fear, and the iron will of a bygone age. Its story is the story of the soldier's heart.